Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Still not Rachel V. Hill. It's Jake Shapiro with DMAC coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, and also California. We are filling in for Rachel as she is out this week on vacation. DMAC, I was at the Colorado Rockies game last night.
It's your fault. It's your fault.
I know. I got a lot of tweets from James Merilatt and specifically telling me it's my fault and not the owner of the Rockies that they're this embarrassing, including one absurd tweet from James Merilatt, which is the Rapids are more fun and more affordable than the Rockies. Do you know, DMAC, that the Rapids have not won a single home game this season yet? They are 29th out of 29 teams in points right now.
Jake, should I be embarrassed that I don't know that or proud?
I think you should be proud that you're far away from the stink that is that team right now. But DMAC, it was a wonderful night at the Yard. I'm always happy to spend a night at a baseball yard, and I guess that's part of the problem here. But there are a lot of people that are trying to spend some time with the Broncos at training camp, and it's going to become a lot more challenging due to their new rules, which requires a free ticket that you had to have claimed this morning, and you can still do it, I believe, for some of the practices ahead for next month's training camp. So, for instance, Saturday, July 29th, it's already sold out. Again, the tickets are free. So there's 3,000 tickets that have been claimed, and we've seen way more than 3,000 people before in the past climb that hill. But according to the Broncos, Arapahoe County is telling them only 3,000 people can be in at their facility.
You know, I do believe there's some construction and some concerns about a huge crowd. You don't want, Bronco Palooza, Bronco stock. You don't want people bathing in creeks, naked and on hallucinogens. I mean, the craziness that could ensue would be unbearable. But that being said, what we're about to see, Jake, is the least attended Broncos training camp of all time. Because clearly what's going to happen, is a lower amount of people will snatch up a bunch of tickets, whether they go or they don't go. And you may see, bizarrely, some sort of weird black market for Broncos training camp tickets. And I don't really know how they're going to stop. I did ask the Broncos about that yesterday, Jake. I did. I asked that very specific question, and they said, we're not afraid of resale of free tickets. Okay. But, I mean, you don't see that possibly happening? Also, I was told if somebody really doesn't get the clue and doesn't have tickets and they've, traveled from Timbuktu, perhaps Narnia with Jamal Murray, that, things would probably get worked out. But, it's a bad plan because there's no guarantees for that. That being said, you're going to see people are just going to snatch tickets up, Jake. I mean, that's what I would have done. If I said I wanted to go to one training camp practice, I would have simply got on the horn or however you did it, order, and I would have got 4. If it's free, I would have got 4 for every practice. And then I would be like, well, go or I'll not go. What do I care? So I think the system, what's going to happen, it's like a birthday party. You invite, 15 people to your birthday party, like 9 of them are not going to show up. In my case, it may be 14. But I don't want to dredge up my 10-year-old birthday party in front of my parents right there. It wasn't their fault. I needed to do a better job getting those invites out. But John Hart showed up. He left early, though. Listen, I'm not going to get into bad things. Jake, what? See, I made my dad laugh. I got to laugh. I got to laugh out of my dad. You remember that was his? Oh, yeah. Yeah, bad memories. Anyways. Yeah, 11. The next year, Jake, this makes sense. The next year, I invited the whole school to come to my house. And there actually was some nudity in the marsh, actually, as it turns out. Yeah. Willie Mercer grabbed Michael Flynn's clothes because he went skinny dipping and just when he was 12. All right, enough from the peanut gallery. So what you're going to have here, Jake, is the lowest training camp in attendance ever for the Broncos. So that's what's about to happen. So when you tell me about being sold out, I'm rolling my eyes. because we know that what that really means. It means D-Mac's 11-year-old birthday party. You know, you can invite whoever you want. They ain't going to show up.
Okay, on birthday parties, just a side quest here. My 21st birthday party, I invited a lot of people, a lot of friends in college, my brother, just a lot of people. One of my best friends has the same birthday as me. So I invited him, but I'm like, hey, this isn't your 21st birthday party. It's my 21st birthday party. And I was like, I feel bad because like I want you to be a part of this, but I also want you to have your own thing. And he's like, no, I'll come to yours. So he came, he didn't bring any of his own friends. He just came and was like another person at my 21st birthday party. So at midnight when we're like clinking the bottles and doing, you know, a shot for your 21st birthday, everyone's like, happy 21st birthday to Jake. Happy birthday to Jake. And I was like, and Ben's 21st too.
Well, that brings up the classic birthday story from Vic Fangio. When Vic Fangio went out of his way to say, hey, it's Teddy Bridgewater's birthday. Isn't that great? Happy birthday to Teddy Bridgewater. And Troy Rank goes, yeah, it's Drew Lock's birthday too. And Vic was like, yeah, happy birthday to Drew. Like he went on and on about Teddy Bridgewater, and he didn't even realize it was also Drew Lock's birthday. And if you wanted to, you know, another reason why Vic Fangio preferred Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback over Drew Lock, you didn't have to look much further than that. So, funny story. And the fact that Vic Fangio wished Teddy Bridgewater, Jake, that is a true story, by the way. He wished Teddy Bridgewater went on about his birthday and had to be reminded it was also his backup quarterback's birthday, too, on the same day.
It was an all-time Broncos thing. I can't wait for how many good practices they have this year with Vance Joseph back.
Of course, my favorite. That's good. My favorite personal. I've got a couple little, you know, I'm a little bit of a sneaky jerk moments. One was asking Nikola Jokic about the parade, knowing there's no way he knew when the parade was, and two, knowing he'd be upset it was 3 days away. All right, I cheated on that one, got a great response. The other one was when Vic Fangio walked out wearing a Gabriel Landeskog number 92 sweater that clearly was handed to him by PR right before he walked out. And then at the end of the press conference, he's wearing a 92 Landeskog sweater. I say to him, who's your favorite player? Again, he's wearing the sweater of Gabriel Landeskog. And Vic Fangio, instead of just simply saying this guy or turning his back or whatever, never mind the fact knowing the guy's name, which he clearly didn't. He just said, I don't really know the players. He's wearing the shirt of one of the players. Just point at your shirt. I mean, it would have been funny, but it was like, who's your favorite player, coach? And I got to admit, Jake, again, being a jerk muggle, I suspected he would have no clue what to say in that instance. And clueless Fangio pointed out to be right.
So we've gotten 2 all-time Jokic quotes in the last month. One was, don't bet against the fat boy, which is just incredible. The other one, which was the parade saga, was your interaction with Jokic, and then him on the podium say, I want to stay on in parade. I don't think we get that latter, you know, on stage one without your quote. So a little assist to you on that one. I appreciate that. But speaking of assists, D-Mac, the Avs need a little more production out of their third line. And they made a pretty nice move this morning. We'll get to Newhook in a second. I want to start with Ross Colton. They flipped one of the picks they got yesterday, 37th in the draft, a top-tier second-round pick for Ross Colton, who we know because he was with Tampa Bay. He's a scrapper. He's going to fit in seemingly with Logan O'Connor and Andrew Cogliano on the third line.
Yeah, he's 26 years old, so he's a little bit older than Newhook. He's 6 feet tall, so he's a lot taller than Newhook. And with Ryan Johansson, you know, he's 6'2". So you can see what the Avs actually are doing, Jake. They are actually getting a little bit bigger. It probably does, and Cogliano's small too. So again, you're adding some size. And of course, I guess JT Compher's just gone. I mean, you know, what other, how else to deduce, right? So it's not some sort of big, high, you know, like, oh my God sort of name, but it's a productive player to fill hopefully a productive role. So, all right, Colton Ross, let's see what you got. You know, it's a good story. He's like a relatively low drafted guy who went with the championship team, college player, went to the University of Vermont. So he's not, a junior guy. He actually went to college. So, all right, cool. I mean, it sounds good to me. Sounds like a solid move. I got no problems about it. The big question is, will they flip Girard and some draft picks for something a little bit more flashy? And we'll see. But I think that's the biggest move they could do. And you've got a lot of movement going on, Jake, in the NHL, period. So you're seeing names sort of go, woo, 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 past you. And you're like, oh, should we have done this? Should we have done that? It's that time of year. And the draft, of course, is here. And aside from Connor Bedard, I mean, I don't know. Do you know any other names in the NHL draft? Everybody should know Bedard, though.
Number 2 is going to be a good player. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but I know number 2 is supposed to be a really good player as well. Bedard's going to be unbelievable, which, by the way, the Avs open up. They announced their schedule last night. They open up opening night in Denver against Connor Bedard in the Blackhawks. So that should be a fun game. And they open up on the road first, I should note, because they haven't opened up on the road in a couple years.
First home game.
Yeah, the home opener. I said that in the most words possible, which is not good writing by me, as I say out loud. I like the moves to beef up. I think they needed to be a little bit more physical than they were last year. I also think the Avs are kind of reimagining themselves as more of a defensive team. If they traded Girard in a couple picks, I would see them going after a guy like Noah Hannafin. Like, I think they would even bulk up their defense even further rather than the offense. I would love to see them pick up a decrepit Sidney Crosby. He's still a productive player. It would be a lot of fun. Or maybe even see them, get Taylor Hall to get flipped from Chicago. For those who don't follow hockey as well, like a third of the league gets traded at the deadline and another third of the league moves in the offseason. The league is constantly moving more so than any other of the big 4 sports here in America. So what else do you think the Avs have to do? Or let me start here. What did the Avs lose in Newhook? And did they just – I think they got a good deal here. I think they got a good price on him, a late first-round pick. He has some potential. He's a younger player. He's shown some flashes. He was a top pick, but he really has not been productive consistently in the NHL yet.
I think they got a taller, bigger Newhook, and hopefully a little bit more productive. You're talking about with Colton, right? What's going on there?
Well, with Ross Colton, I think they got a third-line guy. With Ryan Johansson, I think they got a second-line guy. So Newhook was kind of between the third and the second line, and he wasn't physical enough to be on the third line, and he wasn't productive enough to be on the second line. So he's one of those guys that fell between the cracks. So I see the Avs as filling 2 holes with basically one amalgamation of moves there.
They may have their second line winger if Ben Myers can kind of step up to that role. I mean, that's kind of what they were hoping he would be. He profiles a little bit like Landeskog, a little bit. I don't know, Jake. It's a tough one. Overall, they're kind of all right. I mean, when you look at it, it's that second line winger is a question, and of course, is Johansson going to bounce back and be like he was 2 years ago? So those are your questions. But, your top line is Lehkonen, McKinnon, and Rantanen with Nichushkin, Johansson, and I don't know, Evan Rodriguez, maybe. Ben Myers, maybe.
Myers is a free agent, and Johansson took his number. So that's something to watch.
That's a good pickup, Jake. That's a good pickup right there. So we'll see. Listen, a lot of it's going to play itself out here shortly. The commitment, it really is about, can they get value for Girard or not? And then, their defensive pairings would be Taves McCarr, Byram and Girard, Manson and whoever, I guess, and we'll go from there. And Manson and McDermott, because McDermott's actually signed up. So, but that's
right.
Chris.
Yeah, and you look at their defense right now, it's Taves McCarr, Girard, Byram, and then you got Manson, and you're going to fill in that 6th defensive spot, and probably with another veteran like, you've done the last few years with Jack Johnson and stuff like that, and at a time Ryan Murray. You feel fine with that, honestly. So I'm pretty confident with where the Avs are. I think they need to make one more big move.
I do too.
Yeah. And I think that big move is going to depend or determine where they go this season. So I am in a holding pattern with the Avs. I like what they've done to this point, but I still have not been, okay, they're back to where they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Colton's a good player. He's got championship pedigree, okay? So he's been there. He knows what it's like. I actually think that's a really solid move, Jake. I'm a fan of it. So good for the Avs. I'd say that's a win for today.
And you weren't going to get someone in the second round that was going to impact your roster this year anyway in the NHL. You know, those 2 first-round picks, maybe they come up later in the year or there's somebody for next year. But it's something that, you know, we're learning right now with the Nuggets, with Calvin Booth, is they're essentially moving their assets forward, their draft picks forward, because they know they're in a championship window now. You've got Makar and McKinnon in your primes right now, and those are 2 guys that can end up on Denver's Mount Rushmore. And I'll ask you, D-Mac, on Mount Rushmore of Denver sports athletes, one of my favorite conversations.
Oh, it's the best. Hey, we're going to do Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame after this, right?
We're going to do fixing baseball after that as well.
Oh, okay, great. All right, Mount Rushmore, let's go.
Okay. So I'm a person that does top 4 Denver athletes. I don't think you need one representative from each sport. What about you?
No. I mean, you can do it however you want. I mean, you can put whatever qualifications you want, but if your qualifications are just top 4, now is it Denver or Colorado athletes?
I'm doing Denver sports athletes. So I'm not including.
So we're ruling out Michaela Schifrin.
I'm sadly ruling her out. She didn't play professionally for one of our teams. I'm ruling out, I guess Alfred Williams.
We're ruling out Amy Van Dyken, who has 6 gold medals.
Yes, we're ruling out. We're ruling out our best athletes, D-Mac. We're ruling out.
As long as we're ruling out, people that have completely dominated their sports on an international, worldwide level who are from college, as long as we're taking them out, perfect. Let's go.
Correct. Michaela Schifrin would be on top of John Elway easily in this list.
She's arguably the greatest skier, male or female, ever. So It's hard to not include her at the top, unless you want to say ski racing isn't a sport. And to that, I would say stand at the starting gate at Birds of Prey in Beaver Creek and look at that ice down sheet, and you tell me how you do going 80 miles an hour down that hill, because that's what she does. But as long as we're going to rule that out, we can just talk about, it'd be easier if we just simply said, of the 4 team sports, major team sports in America, I'm rolling my eyes, who are the top athletes, and it doesn't matter. I know where you're going, Jake. So who are the top 4? Well, you got to put Elway up there. It's ridiculous. He's the most iconic person in Colorado, and you got to include championships and what you did afterwards. He literally had a 40-plus year run in terms of championships, and even though he was a terrible general manager, I mean, he was god-awful. What he meant to the organization as president of football, because that's how he started. When he drafted Von Miller, he was the president of football. He was not the general manager, okay? And Brian Sanders was the GM. When all the good stuff happened, it was Brian Sanders that was in charge, not Elway. When Elway got in charge, things fell apart in terms of the GM world. But I give him credit for, that. So it's Elway. It is Nikola Jokic, absolutely, 1,000%. He's one of the greatest athletes of an entire generation. Never mind just Colorado. And then we can have a conversation if you want.
To me, the 4 is the top 3 are a layup. It's Jokic, it's Elway, it's Davis. Or not Davis, excuse me. It's Joe Sakic. Joe Sakic,
yeah, for a lot of the same reasons as Elway.
Right. Yeah. And then I would go 4, I would go Terrell Davis, but I think that's the one that's most easily debatable and also attainable.
Well, you'd have to, if we're just using this, you'd have to have you'd either have to have multiple MVPs or multiple championships, because that's the qualifier for the layup 3. All right. So who has in Colorado sports history, Jake, multiple championships where they were also MVP quality? Who is that guy? And, it's a little tricky because now, first of all, you got to rule out anybody on the Rockies. Like, nobody on the Rockies counts, period. So they're out. Then you got to go to multiple. Well, you only have the Broncos and the Avs to do that with. And it's tricky with the Avs because there were quite a few guys like Patrick Roy who won multiple, but he was a failure as a coach. He sort of failed in that lane.
So you're completely adding on these guys post-athletic playing careers, what they've done in totality for Denver sports, including their executive.
Well, that's the other three that you listed. So I'm just using the qualifications.
But Jokic has not done any of those things, and I would say.
Oh, no. He's got multiple MVPs and a championship.
No. The executive part. The executive part of the situation.
No.
Because even without being an executive, I think Elway's clearly one. Even without Sakic being an executive, I think he's clearly two. You add those things on, and they're adding another championship. That puts them even higher up this list.
All right, fine. I mean, if you want to go Elway, Sakic, Jokic, then who's the fourth one? So you got to have multiple championships. So it's got to be an Avs or Broncos player. Can't be a Nuggets player. Can't be a Rockies player. So who from the Broncos or the Avs? And this is where it gets super tricky because you have to include probably the totality of what they meant, not just in their sports here, but overall. And that would be Peyton Manning. So even though he only was here for 4 years, you had 4 AFC West championships, 2 AFC championships, period, 2 Super Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl victory. And you add in what's happened since he's been on the team. And you add in, if you want, his impact on every sort of thing else in the community because he decided to live here. And you add in the fact he won multiple Super Bowls and he's a 5-time MVP. And because he's essentially made Colorado his home, he becomes a Colorado athlete. So it's Peyton Manning as the fourth one. By logic.
Yeah. I think Peter Forsberg, Patrick Roy, Terrell Davis are all eligible. That's why I went with Terrell Davis because of the MVP, because of the 2 Super Bowls.
All right, but let's look, yes, and he did have an MVP Super Bowl, but he did not have a regular season MVP.
Right, and Patrick Roy had a Conn Smythe in the playoffs as well.
Right, but that team was, that's really tricky because what was that team that won in 96? Were they really the Colorado Avalanche, Jake, or were they the Quebec Nordiques West? They were developed in Quebec, not Colorado. They just so happened to skate on the ice and win a championship that year. It really had nothing to do, and talk about a spoiled fan base that particular year if you actually knew hockey. And you'd have to go back to Don Cherry and the Colorado Rockies to remember your hockey lessons here in Colorado.
Lanny McDonald, baby.
Okay, I mean, it did exist, but it existed in sort of like Eastern Hockey League, let's beat everybody up sort of fashion. It's like slap shot in the Rockies, back in the day. So, okay, TD's career, in my opinion, too short. I think the Avs' first cup run really seriously was more like the Nordiques than Colorado. And then, okay, you get into what they did in 2001, which was awesome.
And Forsberg won a Hart Trophy in between those 2 runs.
Yeah, but Forsberg didn't finish here, man. I take that back. He actually did finish here, but he went away for quite a few years. He came back for like 9 days to finish his career here.
To be retired on the day of the Avs' worst loss in franchise history.
The Valentine's Day Massacre. Great memory. I was at the press conference, and at the press conference was Forsberg and his wife, fiance. Nobody from management even showed up to his own press conference. It was one of the weirdest pressers of all day because not a coach, not a management, nobody showed up. It was just Forsberg and his girlfriend / wife, fiance. Super strange press conference.
Okay, so me and you are completely in agreement, lockstep on the first 3. The fourth one, I think can go a lot of different ways, and I don't know that there's necessarily a wrong answer. And if you're doing the four sports thing, I understand you putting Helton or Walker there. I'm not a four sports guy. I put the four greatest athletes in. My hot take, D-Mac, is that the fourth person is playing right now. And it's either Jamal Murray, Cale Makar, or Nathan MacKinnon.
Yeah, I mean, you could be right. They just got more work to do. But they certainly have all of them. And the person that actually, ironically, maybe not ironically, but who has the best chance is actually Jamal Murray. They're just that good. I see the other changes and adjustments the teams are making. I'm not impressed. Not impressed at all. So, I mean, we could have a really magical run here for the next 5 years. So who knows? But you're right. I mean, Makar, you're talking about, well, with MacKinnon and Makar, you are talking about slam dunk Hall of Famers. Slam dunk Hall of Famers. Really? They really don't have to do anything else. If they stopped tomorrow, they'd be going in. Jamal wouldn't. But the championships and the value of Jamal Murray, I think in the next 5 years, will clearly propel him to a Hall of Fame candidate. And I think he's about to make a run at like 8 straight All-Star game appearances in a row.
See, so, I'm at he's going to be the co-pilot for maybe 3 championships, hopefully just 2 even. He gets 2 All-Star games. He's an All-NBA guy, maybe second team once, third team another time. And it's just what he contributed as the right-hand man to Jokic that gets him there. But
all right, well, hold on. Let me back you up then. Is Murray Jokic going to be as synonymous as Stockton and Malone?
I think it will be. And it's going to be – I do, because it's the same thing, right? Like Stockton and Malone played in Salt Lake City. These guys are playing in Denver, and those guys rose above it. Stockton obviously had the most assists in NBA history, but Tim Duncan was a better player than Karl Malone, not even close. So Jamal Murray has the ability to turn Nikola Jokic and him into those things. It's just Nikola Jokic is so much better than Jamal Murray, whereas Stockton and Malone, yeah, they were both great. You know, one guy was better maybe one season than the other. Jokic is always going to be better than Murray. So Murray's got to rise up to at least close to Jokic's level to be that Jokic-Murray pairing. And I think that'll end up being the pairing of all time in Denver sports. I wrote about this after game 3 when they both had the 30-point triple doubles. I said, it's Forsberg and Sakic. It's Elway and Davis. It's, Todd and nobody, sadly, with the Rockies. But with the Nuggets, they now have those 2 guys that you think of synonymously with their franchise. And it's just about what Murray does going forward. But again, if Cale Makar wins an MVP from defense, and or gets another Conn Smythe and they win another cup, and Cale is clearly the best player, or MacKinnon has a 125-point season and the Avs win another cup, I'm open to either of those guys getting on that list. And I think the Nuggets have a greater chance moving forward of winning another title than the Avs, but I think the window is still open for the Avs.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to put down the Avs. I just think it's harder to win the Stanley Cup than the NBA Finals. I think it's really, really, really hard to build an NBA championship team. But once you build one, it's a hell of a lot easier to repeat than in the Stanley Cup. A lot easier, because you're just less inclined to get the injuries that inherently will come with hockey. It's just the nature of the sport. So, I mean, it's pretty funny, Jake, when we saw an Instagram photo of Bruce Brown that he posted back in the gym. Well, he's back in the gym because basketball is fun. It's a fun thing to do, to put up shots. I mean, it's just like, who doesn't like going to the gym and putting up some shots? Who really wants to strap on football gear? I mean, you might want to go take batting practice. I suppose that's fun, right? And I don't know if you want to throw on the skates and all the gear unless you really have to. I don't think so. But, you just like playing basketball. So once you build that team, it's so much easier just to sort of, knock on wood health-wise if you have the right guys to repeat. Hockey has so many intangibles. And the fact that you can just be beat by a hot goalie, well, that can't happen in basketball. There's not just one person standing at the basket with a broom knocking the shots away. You know, you don't have to get through that, some sort of bizarre intangible, you know? So if you're just a better basketball team, you're probably going to stay a better basketball team for a chunk of time. And when you look at the great dynasties, the wear and tear eventually wore them down. Like eventually the Pistons just got worn down and they won 2. The Celtics and Lakers were happening at the same time. That was crazy in the 80s. But Akeem Olajuwon was around during that time too, and he kind of got caught up in the mess, as did Stockton and Malone. They just came around at the wrong time with the Bulls in the Western Conference. But who is that team, Jake? This is great news for the Nuggets. I mean, like, who is the bad news team for the Nuggets? Doesn't exist, man. They are the bad news team for other players, for other teams, which is freaking awesome. So I think what Jamal and Jokic are about to do is going to be seismic in terms of the definition of the Nuggets as one of those dynasties. I kind of don't see how it doesn't happen, barring some sort of injury. So, yeah. I mean, Jake, I'd love to say McKinnon and McCarr for sure. And, you know, Mikko Rantanen's got a shot at a Hall of Fame career. He does. You know, the numbers are just going to add up for that dude. And he's going to be up there with Teemu Selanne and as the greatest Finnish player of all time. That is going to happen as well, which is pretty awesome. So I think it's a fun argument, debate to sort of have. And as we go through this, Jake, I know what you're really saying. The next 5 years for both these teams are going to be unbelievable because look at what's about to happen. And I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and I'll say, you know, I think the Nuggets right now have the best chance to repeat as champions going all the way back to the 17 Warriors. And there was a lot of comparisons with this Nuggets postseason run to those Warriors teams. So I think it points out just how good these Nuggets are. And you have a chance for them to do something kind of like the Trailblazers in the 70s did, where their first title year, they weren't that great in the regular season. They got amazing in the postseason. And then the next year, they started like 50-10. And that's something that I could see the Nuggets doing this next year, is just being as good as they were in the postseason to start the regular season. And then, you know, they coast their way into the playoffs and then they turn it back on again. I could totally see that out of the Nuggets. I will say, I'm not very scared of any of the teams in the West. None of these moves have scared me thus far. I thought Marcus Smart to Minnesota or to Memphis, that's going to help them quite a bit. I don't think that puts them where the Nuggets are. The team that scares me is if Kristaps Porzingis stays healthy and plays the way he did in Washington last year on Boston, and if Tatum can get to that MVP level so many people are projecting, that is a great team. But we're talking about these teams are going to match up in the NBA Finals. So even then, it's like, okay, the Nuggets lost in the NBA Finals. That's part of, you know, this dynasty building. Stockton and Malone are so synonymous because they got to the NBA Finals. They didn't win anything. So I think that if you're talking about the Nuggets don't have to worry about anything to the NBA Finals, that's good news to building a future dynasty, because we do remember these Cavs and Warriors teams just going at it for a couple of years, and both of those teams had some dynasty things to them. So I'm in a spot right now where I am more scared of the teams that could come out of the East than where the West is trying to catch up. There's no team in the West that seems like a slam dunk that's going to get to the Nuggets level, at least not for a couple of years. I think Oklahoma City will get there. It's just going to take a couple of years. So, yeah, when you think about what the Nuggets could do in the next couple of years, I think Jamal Murray has an amazing chance to end up as this fourth guy, especially if the player he was in this postseason can start to play out over the course of 82 regular season games.
Are you just trying to play up to my parents from Boston because you know they're sitting on the couch right here? Are you just trying to butter them up even more? They already want to pinch your rosy cheeks, Jake, but now you're blowing up Boston in front of the two Bostonites sitting on my couch. All right.
This is so good. That's a great move. But speaking of so good, we're gonna move on. Shohei Ohtani, did you see what he did last night, D-Mac?
I sure did. You know what's remarkable about what he did, Jake? He's actually the sixth player in baseball history to do it, which is really pretty cool. Did you know that Zach Greinke was another one? It probably shouldn't surprise anybody that Madison Bumgarner was another one too. But Zach Greinke got 2 home runs and 2 strikeouts. How about that? Or 10 strikeouts and 2 home runs.
And I think Carlos Zambrano's on that list too. There was a lot of really good hitting pitchers there for a while. But it is funny because I think the last guy to do it as a position player or whatever were qualifying was Jack Stivens for the 1890s Cleveland Spiders,
Awesome.
which is fun because the 1899 Cleveland Spiders are the worst team in the history of professional sports. They went 18-134. They won 2 games in the second half of their regular season. They stopped playing home games halfway through their regular season because no one would go to their home games. So the visiting teams would stop going.
Love it.
The reason that happened, DMAC, is because the owner of the St. Louis Browns bought the Cleveland Spiders that same year and then traded all the good players from the Spiders over to the St. Louis Browns.
Fantastic.
So they were quite literally a minor league team in the majors. Anyway, that's a fun note. But Ohtani accumulated 0.8 WAR yesterday, which is about a win of WAR. The Rockies only have 6 players.
Well, Jay, hold on. You should explain what that is. You should explain what that is.
So WAR is a metric used in baseball. It's been used for about 10 years now, which means a win over a replacement level player. And the idea is that you can get a replacement level player from the minor leagues or free agency, a veteran guy to come in and just be a 0-0. It's what you call up. They should be about a 0-0. We're talking about non-top prospects. So to illustrate how bad Chris Bryant has been for the Rockies, he has a 0-0 WAR over 92 games with the Rockies so far.
That's terrible.
This year, Ryan McMahon has a 1.5 WAR. In his best years, Nolan Arenado had about a 7 WAR. So a 7 is an MVP level. A 4 is about an all-star. A 2 is about a starting level player. So Ryan McMahon's going to prove this year he's a starting level major league player, which we know.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani last night had a 0.8 WAR. The Colorado Rockies only have 6 players this year through half their major league season who have more than a 0.8 WAR. Shohei Ohtani was basically one game. He had as much value to the Angels as most of the players on the Rockies.
That's an awesome number, Jake. That's incredible. That is awesome. Great use of numbers right there to show how brilliant this player is. And you know, I know he came out of the game after 101 pitches with like a sorry about that. You know, so he comes out of the game. Hey, you got to help me on something just a little bit, okay? So he's obviously hitting for himself, right? He comes out of the game. How does he stay in the game as a hitter?
Major League Baseball, a couple off seasons ago, changed the rule just for Shohei Ohtani that pitchers who are DHing for themselves can stay in the game as the DH after they've stopped pitching.
Gotcha. Great rule. Awesome rule.
Which is an awesome rule change. Awesome rule change that they did that.
Yeah, great rule change. And then he hit it was really amazing. And it's a close game, too. This was not some sort of blowout. This is like everything matters. It's a 1-run game at the time and a low-scoring game. So, hey, Mariners, is that who they were playing, I think?
Yeah.
Or Mariners. So, hey, man, really good baseball game. And I would love to see the time of that game. I bet it was under 2 hours and 20 minutes, something like that. It was along those lines. And they take him out for the finger injury. And he had thrown 100 pitches anyways. In the bottom of the inning, he hits a home run. So, I mean, it's there is a young man from LSU, Cagli, you know, some sort of Italian sort of thing. And he plays first base and pitches. And he's definitely going to be a first rounder. And he's about as close as you can get. Like, I think they are going to maybe give him a shot to do both once he becomes a pro. Mm-hmm. But that record that we saw last night, even though 5 other guys had done it, it may be something that we never see again. I mean, ever. That's how great, because they got rid of, you know, because they instituted the option to have the DH. And that's what happened. They didn't require the DH. If any of these ding-dong managers want their pitchers to hit, Jake, they can do it, okay? So right. This was one of the dumbest sports arguments of all time that, like, the letting pitchers hit was a good idea. What it really was banning the DH. And it was so insanely stupid. Only in the National League and the whole entity of baseball, college baseball, international baseball, high school, youth, only in the National League of the Major League Baseball rules did you have a rule not allowing a DH. That's how dumb that rule was. Who's the manager, Jake, that is all of a sudden hitting their pitchers? Anybody? Is anybody doing that?
Joe Madden did it by accident twice when he was managing Tampa Bay.
Well, that's just Joe Madden. He can get lost in the weeds sometimes. But no, so I guess what my big point is, aside from this kid from LSU, I don't even know if there's anybody in the minors, Jake, that is doing this. I don't know if there's anybody in Japan that's actually doing that two-way player role.
So Hunter Green, who's a pitcher for the Reds, he was a two-way player coming out of college. They tried it out in the minor leagues. He was a top 5 pick. Hasn't worked out, and he's only a pitcher now. He's in the major leagues. There's been a couple guys that have gotten to the minors as a two-way player, but one of the aspects of their game hasn't worked out. And if you'll remember with Shohei Ohtani, they said he's ready to pitch at the major league level, but he's not ready to hit. And there was some talks of him between starts going back down to the minors to hit and to get back up to speed his rookie year. And if you think about it, yeah, he's been a really good hitter now the last 2 years, but this is years 4 and 5. His first 2 years, he was okay. He wasn't bad, but it took some time for his bat to get to the point where his pitching was.
Well, so his bat's there.
No doubt about it. But if you think about it, you have to get those skills both at the same time to be at a major league level. On top of that, Ohtani's doing both at an all-star to MVP level. He's pitching like a Cy Young, and he's hitting like an MVP, which is crazy because if you look over to his right, he is the greatest baseball player of his generation standing to his right. And Mike Trout's just got to be looking at like this guy, like you're an alien. So what Trout's or what Ohtani's doing is just mind-boggling. D-Mac, I keep tweeting this. The Rockies should offer him quite literally $1 billion this year in free agency. He's worth more than anything could possibly worth to their franchise. He's a great player on both sides of the ball. He would be so good. I've been on top of him for a while.
Hey, how old is Ohtani?
29 maybe?
29?
Let's see.
$1 billion guaranteed contract.
He's 28.
So would you pay essentially what you're advocating for is a 10-year guaranteed contract at $100 million a year?
Yeah, because the best player in baseball makes about $50 million a year. He is both the best pitcher and the best player in baseball, so he'd be worth about $100 million a year.
How long do you think he'll be able to pitch for, though?
I think he'll be a very good starter for the next 6 to 7 years. And then he might end up being a reliever.
It'd be interesting to $1 billion contract. I got to think about that one. The problem is, like with the Angels, Jake, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but they're not going anywhere. They're not going to win a World Series. They're far from it. So would you invest $1 billion in essentially a sideshow? I mean, because what's the rest of your team? So how would you build? Because at the end of the day, as awesome as he is, and he is awesome, he's like the one guy I would pay to go see in sports. I really, maybe I'd go see, because I've never seen Messi play soccer. I'd probably go pay to see Messi play soccer, especially at the World Cup level. I'd pay to see Ohtani. He's just one of those guys. I was out of town when the Angels were in, or I would have gone to all 3 games. I would have loved to have seen Ohtani in person. I think I understand where you are with your heart with that sort of thing. It sounds wild. I don't think you're completely crazy, but it's just not enough to win a championship. So it's but if you want to make the argument, well, the Rockies aren't going to win a championship anyways. So paying him $1 billion is like building a rooftop. You know, it's just something cool to see. And if it's just something cool to see, well, why not? And could you recoup $1 billion in profits over 10 years? I don't know the answer to that. That's a really, really interesting economic question. Like, how much more would the Rockies make if they had Ohtani, considering they suck right now and they fill up the ballpark throughout the weekends in the summer? I don't know, Jake. That's a tricky one, man. I don't know.
And you're guaranteeing essentially an amount of money that's a third of your franchise's value, as well as you're essentially paying this player as much per season as the rest of your payroll, which is really, or as much as the rest of your payroll would normally make. But I would argue, DMAC, because of he is one player that can do both things, he has even more value in a sense because it's only one roster spot. So if you were going to start to build a championship team in Colorado, which we don't think the Rockies are ever going to get to that point, but let's say you were and you were serious about it, there's no better place to start than Shohei Ohtani. But it's going to be funny to look back on this time in sports, DMAC, and baseball and go, yeah, the Angels at one point had the best player of the 2000s, arguably, Albert Pujols, the best player of the 2010s, Mike Trout, and the best player of the 2020s, Shohei Ohtani, all in the same baseball club, and they couldn't even get to the postseason.
Yeah, it's wild, Jake, and it's hard building a team. It's hard building a team. And then you look, the team that should drive us all nuts is Tampa Bay. Like, seriously, how are they doing it? And look at the division they're doing it in. It's remarkable. So you got to take your lessons from that. If they can do it in Tampa repeatedly, by the way, it's crazy. What's everybody else's problem? Frankly, we've seen Kansas City do it. I mean, they're decrepit now. We've seen Oakland beat the Yankees yesterday, Jake. Baseball's a funny sport. So, but what's been consistent over the years is how bad the Rockies have been. I mean, the Rockies just can't find momentum. And I'm telling you, in this draft, I'm just going to keep saying it until the draft. The next Kyle Freeland is Harry Gustin from Aurora, Colorado, who is the #1 pitcher for Hawaii. 6'1" lefty out of Aurora. He's Kyle Freeland Part 2. I've said it a million times. And there goes my mom. There she goes. Walking back. And yeah, I'm biased because we're family friends with him. But I swear to God, that's the type of guy that you have to invest in. I love your Ohtani idea. I do, Jake. But baseball comes down to pitching. And Ohtani does pitch. So you've got a lot more credence there. Hey, listen, man, I'm not against trying to go get Shohei Ohtani. And if you want to make something really interesting at Coors Field, get Shohei Ohtani. You're going to build up your numbers massively. But if you want to actually win baseball games, draft Harry Gustin. You got to look up Harry Gustin, dude. You might think I'm just blowing smoke because I'm friends with him. I challenge everybody to look up highlights of him. And you can get him in the mid-rounds, no doubt about it. And he is going to be your Kyle Freeland of the future. I swear to God. But, everybody's like kind of rolls their eyes because they know he used to cut my lawn. But every now and then the kid that cuts your lawn is also, an incredible baseball player. It happens. Kids start out somewhere cutting lawns and become great athletes. It does happen.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockies drafted him. They love to draft Colorado kids.
I'll be shocked if they draft him. Shocked if they draft him. I'm trying to sort of pump it up a little bit so they don't do something stupid and not take him. But, hey, next time I talk to you, I want you to have seen Harry Gustin pitch, okay? I challenge you.
I saw you tweet out his highlights one day for Hawaii. You screen grabbed something. I saw a couple pitches, but I didn't watch him. So I'll go watch Harry Gustin pitch. I'll tell you what I think. I'll get my people on it.
Get your people on it. Gustin, not Dustin. Gustin with a G. Gustin.
Okay. And last bit to roll up the Ohtani note. He's hit the longest home run I've ever seen at Coors Field, and he also can strike out 10 batters in a game. He's incredible.
Listen, Jake, I'm all for Ohtani coming to the Rockies. I don't think his people would ever allow it in a million years.
I agree.
But he's got to leave the Angels, though, unfortunately. That's just not going to work out for whatever reason. He could go anywhere, though, and be successful. I do wonder, will he just end up with the Yankees?
Or Dodgers.
Can the yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. I wonder now that he's been in America as long as he's been, if being closer to Japan even matters. I wonder if maybe it's not even.
Well, or it matters more and he wants to play for a team like Seattle who has a lot of Japanese connections. And Seattle, and I know they haven't had a lot of money and haven't been big spenders recently, but historically they have been, and they're good now. They're coming up on a window, so maybe they capitalize that and just throw the. And they have Japanese sponsorships because of Ichiro, so a lot of that money I think they would be able to recoup as good as anybody.
Yeah.
That's
Well, that's my mom. We'll see how it goes, but it's a fun topic, and I love Shohei Ohtani. He's without a doubt my favorite baseball player to watch, and there's just not another Ohtani coming down the pipe. There isn't. There just isn't. So what we saw last night may never be repeated, except by him.
We already talked about Camp 3000. Broncos limiting camp. So we are about done with today's show, DMAC. You are done for the week. I am back with Will Peterson and James Marilat on Thursday and Friday here on Coffee Break. So thanks for tuning into Coffee Break, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning.